Welcome everyone. Today we're going to look at the chunking division method, sometimes called the repeated subtraction. Okay, we've got an example of a division question here. It says 378 divided by 14. Now, in order to use this method, we need to prepare chunks of the divisor, and the divisor in this question is 14. So we need to prepare chunks of 14. When I say prepare, I mean we need to write out some of the multiples. 1 times 14, 2 times 14, and 5 times 14, and lastly 10 times 14. So as you can see, I have already prepared the 1 times 14 is 14, 2 times 14 is 28, 5 times 14. Now it might not be as easy for all students to work that out mentally, so you may want to use your column multiplication method to quickly work out what 5 times 14 is. So let's go ahead and do that. 5 times 4 is 20, put on the 0 and carry the 10 value, which is 2. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 2 is 7. So 5 times 14 therefore is 70. Now 10 times 14 should be a lot easier for most students. You just simply add a 0 at the end. Now we've prepared our chunks of 14, which I hope you will see in a few minutes why this is important and why this is useful. Now, this method is called the chunking division method, or sometimes referred to as the repeated subtraction. Now, it's referred to as the repeated subtraction because we are going to take away multiples of 14 from the original number, which is 378. We're going to try and find how many equal groups of 14 could you make from 378. Now let's refer back to our chunks again. What would be a sensible first chunk to take away? Would we take away one chunk of 14, 2 chunks of 14, 5 chunks of 14, or maybe even 10 chunks of 14? Now 10 chunks of 14 is 140, so I think that's probably the best starting chunk to take away. So let's take away 140. Let's try that again. Let's take away 140 from 378. It's a simple subtraction. And I'm also going to put in brackets 10 at the side. Why? Because it's a chunk of 10 14s that we're taking away. Okay, 140 is a chunk of 10 14s. Now we go ahead and do the simple subtraction. 0 from 8 is 8. 4 from 7 leaves 3. And 3 subtract 1 leaves 2. Now we're down to 238. What's the next step? The next step is to take away another chunk. So let's have a look again. Are we going to take away 14, 28, 70 or 140 from 238? Again, the right decision would be to take away another chunk of 10, which is another 140. So we write 140 underneath, put in brackets again what chunk we're subtracting, and go ahead and carry out the calculation. 0 from 8 leaves 8. 4 from 3, well I can't take 4 from 3, so I'm going to borrow from the 10 next door, or in this case it'll be acting like a 10. And then we have 13 subtract 4 leaves 9, 1 subtract 1 leaves 0, so now we're down to 98. Okay, and we've taken away 2 chunks of 10 14s. Next step is we go back to our prepared chunks. Now we've 98 left. Can we take away another chunk of 10? No, because because 98 is smaller than 140, so we can't take away a chunk of 10. The next largest number to take away, I would say in this case, is going to be the 70. Okay, so we're going to take away 5 chunks of 10. Okay, so we're going to subtract 70. So off we go. We make sure we put our numbers in the correct place. Tens under the tens, units under the units. And I'm taking away 5 chunks of 70 this time. Okay, now 0 from 8 is 8. 7 from 9 is 2. So now we're down to 28. So again I refer back to my chunking method. Which number is nearest 28? Well actually I can see in this case we have a number which is exactly 28, and it's a 2. It's a multiple of 2 14s. So now I take away my 2 14s, which is exactly 28. I make sure I record how many chunks of 14 it is each time. I go ahead and finish off the calculation. 8 from 8 leaves 0, 2 from 2 leaves 0. And the very final step is to add up my chunks of repeated subtraction. So we took away one chunk of 10, a second chunk of 10, which is 20. We took away another chunk of 5 14s, and we repeatedly took away a chunk of 2 14s. So when you add all those numbers together, you get 10 plus 10 is 20, plus 5 is 25, plus 2 is 27. So our answer is 27. 378 divided into 14 equal groups means that there's 27 in each group. So that's the chunking method. Let's do one more example. Okay. This example is 1710 divided by 45. Again, we're going to use our repeated subtraction method, and the first step of that is to make our chunks of the divisor. The divisor here is 45, and you may now notice at this stage that I'm using the same 4 different chunk methods. I want to get 1 multiple of 45, 2 multiples of 45, 5 multiples of 45, and 10 multiples of 45. I would suggest they're very good chunks to use. They give you lots of options, and you can select the best chunk to take away each time. Okay, now I've worked out already what 1 chunk of 45 is, and I've worked out what 2 chunks of 45 is. Now 5 chunks of 45 might be trickier for some students, so again we can use our column multiplication method. And if we use at the bottom, 5 times 5 is 25. Put down the 5, carry the 10 value, the 2. Then we have 5 times 4 is 20, plus the 2 is 22. So therefore 5 times 45 is 225. And lastly, 10 times 45, that should be easier for most students to work out. We simply add a 0 to the end, and that is 450. Okay, now we're ready to start. We're ready to begin our repeated subtraction. And we start by simply writing the number that we're dividing, which is 1710. And we begin by taking away chunks. Now if I look at my pre-prepared chunks of 45, I see that the first and perhaps the most obvious chunk to take away would be the chunk of 10, which would be 450. So I'm going to take away 450, and I'm going to record it this side. That's the chunk of 10. I'm going to subtract. 0 from 0 is 0. 5 from 1 I cannot do, so I borrow from the neighbour. That becomes 5 from 11, that leaves 6. 4 from 6 leaves 2, and there's nothing taken away from the 1, so that's there. Okay, now I'm going to take away another chunk of 10. I think that's the next sensible thing to do. Put down my 10. Off I go with the calculation. Alright, 0 from 0 is 0. 5 from 6 is 1. 4 from 2 I cannot do, so I can just make it 4 from 12. 4 from 12 is 8. Alright, so I've taken away another chunk of 10. Okay, now we're now left with 810, so I can take away another chunk of 10, another 450. So off I go, and I take away another chunk of 10. Perhaps should put my subtraction sign in there as well. Okay, 0 from 0 is 0. 5 from 1 I cannot do, so I borrow from the neighbour. 5 from 11 is 6. 4 from 7 is 3. Okay, I've taken away 3 chunks of 10. Can I take away another chunk of 10? No, I can't, because I can see down here that another chunk of 10 is 450. It's too big. So I'm going to select the next most suitable chunk of 45, which in this case is going to be 225. So I'm going to take away a chunk of 5 45s, which is 225. I'm going to take away the 225, and I'm going to record it as a chunk of 5. I'm going to go ahead and do my calculation. 5 from 0 I cannot do, so I borrow from the guy next door. Then it becomes 5 from 10 is 5. 2 from 5 I cannot do, that becomes a 3. And 2 from 3 leaves a 1. So now we're down to 135. Now I have another decision to make. So I go back to my chunks, look a little closer. I can see that I can't take away a chunk of 10. I can't take away a chunk of 5. But I can take away a chunk of 2 times 45, which is 90. So that's my next step. I'm going to take away a chunk of 2 45s, which is 90. And I'm going to record it in brackets that's 2 multiples of 45. And if I go and subtract, 0 from 5 leaves 5. 9 from 3 I cannot do, so it becomes 9 from 13. 9 from 13 leaves 45. Now we're down to 45, and without even needing to refer, I know that that's simply one chunk of 45. I go ahead and do it, subtract it, and I'm left with 0. The very last step to do, of course, is to add up all the chunks that I subtracted. Okay, so I can put a green circle around. There's 10, and another 10 is 20, and another 10 is 30. Add 5 more chunks is 35. Add 2 more chunks is 37. And lastly, add 1 chunk is 38. So my answer to 1710 divided by 45 is 38. Key steps to using this method successfully, I would suggest, are to make your chunks of 1 times the divisor, 2 times the divisor, 5 times the divisor, and 10 times the divisor. So I would encourage students to prepare that before they begin the repeated subtraction. Go ahead then and take away the chunks. Record the chunk in the brackets, like here. Put brackets around the chunk you're taking away each time. I think that's a very important step. And of course, lastly, take care when adding up all the chunks. Hope this method is useful to you. Feel free to use it, and practice makes perfect. Okay. Enjoy and share this YouTube page with anybody you feel may benefit from it. Okay, bye-bye.